A Kennedy Thanksgiving. From the book White House by the Sea by Katie Story, she recounts how the Kennedys spent the holiday. Thanksgiving was a Hyannisport day for the family. There were always a few summer people who stayed through the November holiday, or families with kids who came back to celebrate together for the school break. The trees were bare, the hydrangea bushes crisp and brown, and many summer homes weren't winterized. So the Thanksgiving families layered up to gather around the dining tables for one last meal before closing up the houses until Memorial Day. For the Kennedys, Thanksgiving Thursday, 1956, began like the years before it. Thursday always started with a big breakfast of bacon, eggs, and waffles. Rose was up with the sun for the early Mass at St. Francis Xavier, but the rest of the family usually took their time, eventually piling into cars, making their way to the mid-morning service. They always sat in the second row, facing the altar. After church, they went out for a sail. Even though the water was so cold, a splash felt like a slap. After everyone was back on shore and cleaned up, they threw on old sweaters and skirts and heavy walking shoes before making their way over to the big house, where dinner started promptly at 1. There were no formal seating assignments, except for Rose and Joe, who sat opposite each other at the heads of a long mahogany dining table. In the middle sat 4 straight, polished silver candlesticks, framing the centerpiece of fruit, gourds, fall leaves, and a baby pumpkin. By the time each person chose a seat, the table was set with delicate ivory Lenox china edged with gold, which Rose had purchased in London. Each setting was paired with a crystal water goblet and a crystal tumbler for milk. The Kennedys, particularly the men, drank enormous quantities of milk, and alcohol was not served on Thanksgiving. They jumped instead to the first course: hot clam broth on a cold day, chilled soup if it was balmy. Joe started the meal with grace. "Bless us, O Lord, and these thy gifts, which we are about to receive from thy bounty through Christ our Lord. Amen." Then the bickering over the cuts of turkey began. They all liked the same thing, the white meat, said Miss Anderson, the family cook. That year, in 1956, there was frisson in the air. When the plates began to clear, Jack pulled his father away from the table into the sunroom. When they came back, their arms were around each other and they had matching grins. Jack had decided to run for president. They told the family he'd do it in 1960. He wouldn't announce it publicly for a while, but the path to the White House was charted that night. Many years later, when Jack was elected president, the presidential flag was raised on the big house lawn when Jack flew in on Wednesday. He was driven over to Hyannis instead of his usual helicopter ride because of the thick mist and fog that envelops the Cape for most of the fall, making it hard to look much beyond what's right in front of you. The Secret Service cottages behind the yachtsmen were filled again, and the sightseers and police officers lined the narrow streets as many houses sat empty, shut down for the season. The families whose traditions brought them back to the Cape for Thanksgiving tossed logs into the fireplaces, which sent plumes of smoke up chimneys. From outside, the windows of their houses appeared golden through the fog. Rose hosted the family at the big house for cocktails Wednesday night, served with fresh local oysters and lobster tails. Everyone stayed for dinner, except for Jack and Jackie, who went down the street to their house. Jackie probably likes to be alone for a change, Rose wrote in her diary 2 nights later. She always has a crowd so much. Afterwards, they went down to the basement for a movie, like they had when they were kids. But everyone was tired, and one by one they left the big house to go to their own homes to sleep. Thursday morning, the fog remained, but Rose walked over to the golf course to play around. It was frigid, so she wore 2 sweaters, a rubber rain jacket, snuggies under her slacks, and cream on her face. She liked her routine, no matter what else was going on around her, no matter what anyone else thought. She played 2 balls on 6 holes. Thanksgiving morning was quiet. Jackie sat with Caroline, telling her the story of the first Thanksgiving. When they took their Welsh Terrier, Charlie, out into the crisp fall morning, he got into a fight with a neighbor dog. Reporters watching from the end of the street jotted down the scene. Both pets were okay, but it would make the front page of the Boston Globe the next day. Friday morning, the clouds brought rain, but still the family played touch football on the lawn, except for Jack, who spent the day working. A dozen men with slicked hair sat hip to hip on floral couches, notebooks balanced in their laps. For lunch, Rose sent over thermoses of fish chowder to all the family homes. Nearly every day that weekend, a group of Kennedys went over to Hyannis to skate at the Lieutenant Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. Memorial Skating Center. On Thanksgiving Day, Jack, Jackie, Ted, Joan, Eunice, Jean, and Pat rode over to the rink right at dusk. "Is the rink closed?" asked the president. "Yes," said the man closing up, "but it'll be open in just 2 minutes." That weekend, Jack sat in the stands watching his nephews play ice hockey, and during open sessions, the kids skated loops over the rain-slicked ice, laughing, enjoying themselves at the rink, named for the uncle they never met. Before everyone flew back home, the family got together to celebrate Bobby's and Sarge's birthdays with lobster and ice cream. Jack, who'd been working most of the weekend, joined the celebration. He seemed happy, light. He asked his friend Faye to sing "Hooray for Hollywood." Then Ted, who never passed up an opportunity to sing, belted out "Heart of My Heart," while Eunice joined in and Joan played the piano. Jackie, in her pink Schiaparelli slack suit, taught everyone the latest dance craze, the twist. She took center stage in the living room, demonstrating by swinging her hands to one side, her hips to the other, and her feet staying planted on the plush rug. Music was piped through the sound system Joe had installed on the first floor a few years earlier. They each took a turn trying the move. Jack sat back in his chair with a small cigar, smiling, watching the family together, laughing and teasing like they had in that living room when they were kids. A few years later, in the same year that Jack passed, nobody was sure if Jackie would come for Thanksgiving, but she arrived on Wednesday, flying back to the Cape with Caroline and John, after visiting Jack's grave at Arlington National Cemetery. Her exhaustion showed on her face, but as soon as she arrived, she went straight to the big house and said to the first person she saw, "I'm here to see Grandpa." Hugging against her chest was the heavy American flag that had been draped over Jack's casket. She went straight to Joe's room on the second floor. She sat on a low stool next to his bed, eye to eye with him, held his hand and said, "Grandpa, Jack's gone, and nothing will ever be the same again for us. He's gone, and I want to tell you all about it." She went over it all, leaving Washington for the trip to Dallas. She left the flag for Joe, telling him as she did that she was tired and going back to her home, but that she'd be back the next day to spend Thanksgiving with him. The next day, the dining table was covered in a dozen pies as the family finished their meals. Everyone tried their best to act like everything was normal, like it was any other Thanksgiving. The family went through the motions. After dinner, they all filed out of the house for their usual touch football game. The day after Thanksgiving, Jackie invited Life magazine writer Theodore H. White to the house on Irving Avenue she had shared with her husband. White's limousine turned down Irving Avenue in the rain, its headlights bouncing off the hedges. Pat Lawford was with Jackie, and Jack's friends, Chuck Spaulding, Dave Powers, and Franklin D. Roosevelt Jr. Jackie stood to greet the writer. She wore black slacks and a beige sweater. He noticed her eyes were wider than pools. They went to the living room and sat on the sofa. Jackie asked him, "What shall I say?" He suggested, "How do you want him remembered?" The rain fell heavy on the roof, the wind gently shaking the windows as she began to tell her story, holding a gold St. Christopher's medal in her hand. She told him she wanted to live where she and Jack had lived together. "I'm going to live in Georgetown. I'm going to live on the Cape. I'm going to be with the Kennedys." She then said every detail she remembered from the day in Dallas. She spoke so clearly and calmly, twisting the ring on her finger, sitting on the couch she'd sat on with Jack so many times before. "There's this one thing I want to say," she told White before he left at 2 in the morning. She told him she kept thinking of a line from a song Jack loved. "Don't let it be forgot that once there was a spot for a brief moment that was known as Camelot." Thank you so much for watching A Kennedy Thanksgiving. Please let me know your favorite Thanksgiving memory and Thanksgiving dish in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, and I'll see you in the next one.